Neroli was a long journey for me. It's in the world of various perfume ingredients, certain things are so well known and established that they become an anti-trend. And that's exactly my relationship with the genre of fragrance design that contains or centers the accord of Neroli. Let's define the beast. So, there are some super plants in the world of fragrance. There are certain live things on this planet that are so prolific that almost half of the industry relies or exists thanks to them. So a bitter orange tree, and there are two varieties that are cultivated and are super useful for the extraction and productions of all kinds of ingredients that are used in perfumery and anything that you can think of, scent and flavor. So orange tree is one of those monumental plants. Three major super famous oils, or let's say their own notes that you'll find in the description of fragrances that are produced from bitter orange tree are orange blossom oil, and it's done through placing the flowers into solvents. So it's chemical extraction, diffusion if you wish, chemically induced diffusion of aromatic ingredients into a given substance. Then you can do all kinds of filtering, clearing, and condensing and concentrating either the whole thing into what's called orange blossom essential oil, or separate it into ingredients via various processes. So orange blossom oil is one. Neroli is the same tree and even the same part of the tree blossoms that are placed in huge, massive quantities in boiling water, and then you do distillation. So you pretty much evaporate. There is certain construction of how these aromatic ingredients then condense and fall into their own containers, and then again after that you can do all kinds of filtering, condensations, things that will get you a neroli essential oil or other components separating specific aromatic molecules from the mix. Interestingly enough, however, in our pedestrian world of smells, most people consider neroli to be cheaper smelling than orange blossom. I did mention, before we jump into the cultural value pricing of smells, the third oil that is super famous is petitgrain oil. You take leaves and the pieces of branches and you also put them in the boiling water, distillation, you get to extract aromatic ingredients that way. So bitter orange tree is incredibly prolific, super important for the whole ecosystem of producing flavors and smells. So now to the fascinating man-made system of what's valued at what. Neroli, in fact, is way more expensive to produce. You have to destroy astronomical, not astronomical, but a quite substantially large amount of natural ingredients and blossoms in order to produce, that many mils of neroli oil. Orange blossom is cheaper. However, in the public perception in the last century or two, neroli is associated with soaps and therefore smells cheap. It's a really interesting and tragic twist of fate on neroli because historically it was actually considered to be the riches, the aphrodisiac of the riches. Is it truly an erotic stimulant? I don't think we have a decisive yes on this issue, other than psychosomatic. If it gets you in the mood, what works. However, neroli has a long history of being this very expensive aphrodisiac. So rich people would buy and gift neroli oil to either their, sweet 16, your heir, the man of the household, or a bride to be, in order to put on themselves and make themselves irresistible to their chosen mate. I find this dramatic swap of value and meaning quite almost comedic. It's a bitter irony. Something that was so exclusive, expensive, and sexy. Neroli oil was used in all kinds of occult rituals and whatnot, and it was always associated with this extreme, dark, irresistible sexiness. But once the modern chemistry and the manufacturing chemical plants came along, we learned how to extract key chemical ingredients that reproduce this feel of neroli. And then we start putting it in soaps on commercial, wide-scale, mass market level. And instead of this dark, expensive, exclusive, mysterious, sexually charged scent profile, we turn to, oh, that's clean. That's what clean smells to a lot of people. If you didn't have a chance to order a Neroli essential oil, I have a number of essential oils here just for the sake of reference, because I review so many perfumes and I try to break them down into accessible scent profiles that we can discuss and relate to. It's no longer as cheap, but you also have to be very discerning about the quality of the producer. As I said, ever since the modern contemporary chemistry learned how to reproduce neroli scent, there are a lot of fake essential oils on the market for famous ingredients, and you really gotta get it from a well-established, trusted manufacturer that's been producing those oils forever. Otherwise, you're most likely getting a chemically designed knockoff. As I said, neroli oil is very expensive to produce. It's not supposed to be cheap if it's authentic. That said, most of people will recognize neroli because it will smell like a lemon soap, more or less. Why is the neroli so different in the way that it smells from petitgrain oil or orange blossom? They're both very famous marketing terms, orange blossom, neroli, and yet they smell quite different. Orange blossom tends to be sweeter, fruitier. It has this floral but citrusy aspect. But orange blossom, since you use solvents, you actually extract way more and richer bouquet of aromatic molecules out of the blossoms, because when you boil something, you actually destroy and modify the chemical composition of the original flowers quite a bit. So neroli, oddly enough, even though it's the most simple organic extraction method, you literally just boil the flowers and you collect what's there, it's one of the most chemically destructive with respect to the original headspace, what the flower actually smells like. Neroli is characteristically citrusy but more sharper. Some people say green, refreshing. I mean, it depends to me what you find refreshing. To me, neroli for many years either smelled like a lemon soap and therefore cheap, more like cleaning products rather than a personal fragrance, something that I would find enticing or even remotely sexy, but whatsoever not. Or sharp, austere, it's almost like shards of glass thrown at your nose. It's very piercing, very almost disturbing. It took me a while to find neroli scents that I can enjoy and appreciate, so they don't smell like soap to me. Because once something smells like a generic cleaning product, it defeats the purpose as a personal perfume, right? So I went on quite a journey that I'm gonna give you a glimpse into with a clip here. But before we go there, just for those of us who to show off every once in a while, here is, if you want to just drop it somewhere casually in the forum or dinner table and be not understood by the whole group of people at all, that's what makes neroli smell like neroli. It has a huge block of molecules that are called terpenes or terpenoids. I think terpenoids probably is easier to say in any language. So those are limonel, beta-pinene, alpha-terpineol, linalool, and nerolidol. That's a mouthful. I don't expect anybody to remember that. So terpenoids, limonel, sounds like a lemon, and neroli does smell like this very verdant, sharp, lemony, zesty, greeny thing. And actually there are more that makes Neroli smell like Neroli, but that's terpenoids. I think that will give you a good idea. However, just a full disclaimer, the more you dive into the chemistry and analytical chemistry of the molecules and how they smell, the more confusing it gets. Just to outline it so we're not overconfident, there are a lot of terpenoids that don't smell anything like each other. It's a large group of structures, chemical structures that look the same but don't smell the same. However, it gets worse. There are also molecular structures that look nothing like each other but smell very similar. And there are molecules that look, as I said, very similar. It's just one little group that's different here. You'll look at their smile or, their chemical signature, how it's written. I really couldn't tell you apart, guys. And yet, very, very different olfactive response to smelling those. So a bit of a gray area. But it's fun. Every once in a while it's fun to drop, oh, there's so much ethyl maltol in here, I can't. Or, oh, Baccarat Rouge, oh, please, just spare me all that Evernil and Ambergsan. I can't. I'm not an Ambergsan kind of person. It's fun. It's fun to throw these terms every once in a while. So now you know. Huge block of terpenoids. There are some geraniol shared with rose, farnesol, so floral, linaloyl acetate, methyl anthranilate, but I feel some people have already turned on the video, so to preserve our community intact for duration of this review, I'm gonna stop with chemical names. Here is how my exploration went, the fragrances that I tried, and what I picked as the best and the most interesting Neroli to wear. The result was surprising to me. I have finished Neroli Nasimba by Maison Crivelli. It was a rather confusing plasticky patchouli scent to me, with a bit of a sharpness of Neroli, but not the best facets of Neroli to begin with. I am not a big fan of Neroli Nasimba. It's not the patchouli I would wear, and that's not the Neroli I would wear. But I am infinitely grateful to a subscriber who sent me a decant to try. So Neroli Nasimba Maison Crivelli. Next is Juliette Has a Gun Gentlewoman. This was cyanidic bitter almond plus Neroli. It is an interesting one. A friend of mine has a full-size bottle, is a big fan, and she sent me 5 ml to try a while ago. And it was just so harsh and austere. Imagine cyanidic bitter almonds plus sharp Neroli. It's just a knife piercing through. And yet, I learned to appreciate it enough to finish the sample, but it's still a bit much for me. If you have hot skin, if you're constantly sweating, if you just generally have higher temperature than an average person, maybe this will open up interestingly. And yet I'm not 100% sure that such austere components blossom on hot skin well. Sometimes they go even more sour or bitter than on the cold skin. So I don't know. If you've ever worn Gentlewoman by Juliette Has a Gun, let us know. It's one of their classics. It's not the bestseller, but it's one of the OGs by Juliette Has a Gun, and one of the more interesting ones for sure. And yet, just a bit too harsh for me. Next was the Neroli à la Cardamome La Guatemala by Chopard and their Haute Perfumery line, a more expensive line that they have at Chopard. I used up 4 ml. So Neroli Neroli à la Cardamome de Guatemala is clean. Neroli smells like soap because soaps smell like Neroli. So this is the most common description of fragrances that you'll find when you think about Neroli centric. It will smell like soap. And Neroli as a ingredient is not that far from fleur d'orange and other orange tree-based orange blossom type of ingredients. However, it has this characteristic. Neroli can be very sharp, like a blade, almost bitter. Think sharp, light, bitter orange. Or Neroli can be scratchy, very textured, with the same facet, but not as sharp, as it falls into this little fluffy, soapy accord. And the Chopard Neroli is more of a sharper edge at the beginning and softer, very almost sandalwood, woody accord at the heart. That combination makes it very charming. It's a very interesting dynamic to witness. But I'm not a big fan of the opening, and it's I'm gonna say it, generic. For the price tag that Chopard wants for their haute perfumery, high perfumery line, I think I am just as well served with a recently purchased Elizabeth and James Nirvana French Grey. Here it's muskier Neroli. You don't get that creamy woody accord at the heart, which I appreciate in the Chopard Neroli, but the opening, and I would say 70% of the scent here is nearly the same. And this is, again, maybe it's just my nose is not sensitive enough to the 50 Shades of Neroli, but this does the job, and it costs 10 times less, something of that nature. And the last notable Neroli, and I want to specifically emphasize this because this is super affordable celebrity fragrance, is Glow by J. Lo. I've had a mini years ago, many years ago, and I remember that it was very annoyingly prickly to me in my memory and too sweet. But that was so many years ago. That was before I really knew anything about Neroli or notes or anything. I just remember it was fizzy and too sweet at the same time. It was a really odd combination. However, now things make way more sense. Orange blossom, Neroli, and grapefruit, jasmine rose and tuberose, musk, vanilla, sandalwood, and amber. I dare say, comparatively to Neroli scents that I don't like, this is not bad. Glow by J. Lo is a very decent Neroli scent. The bottle looks, I would say it's beautiful. So not that bad. I enjoyed wearing those 2 ml. And when it comes to my favorite Neroli so far, which I am considering purchasing full size, but we'll see in the next installment of Last Drops if I did or did not do so, is Aerin Aegea Blossom. A lot of people complain that Aegea Blossom is, I'm halfway through, but just a few words. A lot of people complain that this is just a soapy scent, but I love it for it. And to me, it's floral enough, interesting enough that this is the Neroli scent I'm gravitating towards. So it turns out of the 2 typical facets of Neroli-centric scents, I'm more into the fluffy, soapy part than I am into the sharp, piercing, astringent Neroli part. Though, I do have an option if I ever want to wear one. I just don't see a point of buying an expensive Neroli scent at this time because I've had about enough. Just while testing all of this, I think I pretty much closed that chapter. The most surprising result for me was that it's not some super sophisticated, complex, sexy Neroli scent was out there and I just didn't spend enough money or I didn't spend enough time searching for it. I made a full circle and arrived with a different mental map and with a different emotional understanding of this lemon soap simplicity that was there all along. I now not only tolerate, I wouldn't say that Neroli is my key fragrance ingredient in my wardrobe, but I like, adore, and enjoy Neroli for this verdant green, ice, glass, shardy, bright, lemony soapiness that it is. And the things that I wear are not actually the most expensive. And again, for me, the most expensive Neroli centric scents that I've smelled didn't really deliver anything that tremendously, groundbreakingly diverse or diverging from mass market or sort of cheaper designer options. So my verdict is, you will learn to appreciate the brightness and simplicity of Neroli if you just give yourself time and relax around the genres of perfumery that seem either too simple or too unpleasant, whichever way. Just relax around it. The more you learn, the more you compare, the more things you layer and study, you will start making these full circles of appreciation of simplicity and beauty, the things that are well defined and maybe even common. Neroli is a commodity today because of advancements in modern chemistry. And yes, the flip of value from exclusive, expensive, rare, aphrodisiac to, oh, that smells clean, just like soap. It is a beautiful cultural irony. It's quite an interesting, story for Neroli if it was a character in the movie, for sure. But yet I learned to love it more because we studied it to death, because we dissected it into molecule by molecule and implemented Neroli, fake Neroli, into mass market chemistry, surrounded ourselves with it, redefined what this scent means. I still learned to love the brightness and simplicity of Neroli as it exists in our collective olfactory cultural world. And I would say that in my book, Neroli is one of those staples that you'll learn to appreciate and you never have to spend too much money on. This is like a fashion comparison would be a cotton t-shirt. Yes, you can spend ridiculous money on a designer white t-shirt. It will probably be slightly better cotton. It will probably be potentially, if you care about it, slightly better fit for your physique. Not necessarily. But it's a t-shirt. And there are certain fashion designs, such as suit, that by definition, the most complex, craft-dependent, quality of the materials, quality of the craft-dependent fashion pieces that you will ever buy. So Neroli is not a suit in the olfaction fashion and the factual world of arts and science. Neroli is a t-shirt, but a good t-shirt can be a true staple in your collection. That's how I see it. If you're curious about the history and the cultural meaning and the value building of fragrances, scents, anything related to how we perceive the world through our senses, through the perception of the world outside of us, I would recommend you subscribe to Perfume Nation on all the streaming platforms. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, everywhere. That's the part of my TV station, which is Maria Meliora on YouTube, that is the most dedicated to these dives. But also, if you're looking for fun and structured perfume reviews so you can choose your next best pick in any given genre, YouTube is the place for it. For example, I just made a 2-part series on leather. It's out. I made a feature on iris perfumes, which is super popular. And also an interesting and adjacent to iris perfumes genre, a video that is doing fairly well, is my collection of nude perfumes. I feel that introspective genre of perfumery is right now, it's very height. It's not a new idea, but I feel after COVID, it became just blossoming genre in perfumery. Things that are intimate, things that are not screaming on your face and yet are complex and have certain amount of dynamism. They live with you, they change with time. You can watch these and I'll link them somewhere here. Please like and subscribe. It really does help to bring more interesting brands, perfumes, and guests to this channel. And I hope I'll hear about your experiences with Neroli. What was your journey? What are your top and maybe not so favorite picks in that genre? And I will be not so patiently waiting for your comments down there. We'll meet in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.